right, go ahead.
Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Big Bill coming to you live from YouTube Model Builders on the Tuesday night show, January 10th, 2017. This is the first show of the month and the first show of the new year for 2017. Tonight, we have a great, I think it's a great show. But before we get into that, let me tell you about YouTube Model Builders. And YouTube Model Builders, we're going to do the live show and as Hangouts. And also, you'll realize that we've changed the time for the Tuesday night show. The new time is now 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So for the Tuesday night show, the new time is, again, I have to repeat it, is 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Thursday night show, General Hangout, will remain the same at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Central Time, and 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as the live show will be at 9 p.m. Central Time and 10 p.m. Eastern Time. That's a lot to say in a short time, but we wanted to keep you abreast of what was going on the time-wise. Tuesday night is the only time change. You can see, go to the YouTube Model Builders webpage at www.youtubemodelbuilders.com, where you can register if you have not for our free e-magazine that comes out every 2 months, and the next magazine will be hopefully tentatively scheduled for the 15th, 16th, or the week of the 15th, and it's going to be a great magazine, as it always is. JD and his crew do a great job. Also, we have the Hangouts, as you can see, Tuesday night Hangouts, as well as Thursday night General Hangouts, and we also have the live show, which will be the third Saturday of every month. Right now, the scheduling for the live for the next show is January 24th, and that's going to be Barry's show, and he's going to be doing that on LEDs, lighting. That's going to be a pretty interesting show because everybody seems to be the craze. Every time I go to Home Depot, Lowe's, it always seems to be LEDs are taking over, especially in Model Railroad. If you check out Troy's YouTube channel, you'll see what he's done with the lighting and LEDs. So that's going to be interesting. But once again, we have the Tuesday night Hangout. Again, I'm really just going over this simply so that you guys get it, because I don't want you to get confused. But please go to our webpage at youtubemodelbuilders.com, and there you'll see all the changes. But Tuesday night, future Tuesday night shows are at 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the Thursday night Hangout will remain the same at 9 p.m. Central Time and 10 p.m. Eastern Time as well. The live show will also remain at 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So without further ado,
Bill.
What's that, John? I'm sorry.
I forgot, because this is a brand new show, but also January the 25th, the day after Barry's show, is going to be our Arduino workshop with Chris of MRL Trains.
Yes, Chris of MRL Trains will be introducing the new series on Arduino, which we're going to put out a promo video out for that as well. And also we're also getting into fine scale build with Miles, Hal, Andrew, and Barry. They'll be doing that in the future. We have a lot of things in store for you guys down the pike. A lot of things in store, and I hope you enjoy it and tune in. But before we get started with tonight's show, I want to give a big shout out to my good friends, Jesus, Corinne, Jackson, and Noah. Especially Noah. Noah, if you guys have been watching on my YouTube channel, you notice that Noah is the young man that I've been arm wrestling, and and Corinne is his mother. And he called me up today and told me that the kid is in the gym 10, 12 hours a day working out, getting ready for the rematch of me and him doing. What does it matter that he's 8 months old? I can still take him. But I want to give a shout out to those guys out there, Jesus, Corinne, Jackson, and Noah. God bless you guys. Tonight's show, with further ado, we got Bill Beranek, the track planner, on tonight. And tonight he's going to be doing a 2-part show here. The first part of the show is going to be designing a directionally pure track plan. And the second part of it is the evolution of a track plan. I don't know about you, but whenever Bill Beranek, the track planner on this show, I am all ears and my hand is on the record button. So Bill, give us a heads up on what this is going to be about tonight.
Well, thanks, Bill, and thanks to everybody for watching tonight. This show came about by two things that happened to me. Actually, one that was really important. I was designing a layout for a track plan for a client, and what I thought he should have and what he wanted we didn't correspond very well. And eventually I got it, and I got it right, and it turned out very, very good. And it was a complete departure from what I normally do on track plans. That's going to be the second part of this program. But the first part of it was one that doesn't get talked about very often, but it plays a really important role in designing track plans. And that's designing one where directionally the plan is designed what I call to be directionally pure. And that may sound like, you know, a really complicated thing. It's really very, very simple in that. So what we'll do here, designing a directionally pure track plan, really what we're talking about is railroad north or railroad south. And I'll do a little explanation of that here in just a minute. This is what railroads are. When you're designing track plans, I always want to know, are we going to do a railroad north or a railroad south? That will dictate a lot about how I design there. My usual disclaimer, anything I say tonight is my own, solely my opinions, not anybody else's, and so I just like to get that out of the way. Okay, what's directionally pure? Well, simply stated, regardless of where the operator is standing, the operator is always looking either railroad north or railroad south. This has nothing to do with the layout's physical orientation in the room. And that's kind of important for you to keep thinking about here is don't worry about physical or compass directions. Just think about the railroad itself. There. Now, what I'd like to do first is just define railroad geographical direction. Some people know this, some people don't. Most U.S. railroads use east and west. It is unusual for U.S. railroads to designate north and south as the running direction. The exception to the rule, the New York subway. It does run basically east and west, but as Bill told me, because he used to work it, everything they talked was north and south. It wasn't east and west. When designing a track plan, think in terms of railroad north or railroad south. This avoids any confusion with compass direction. What I mean by that is when operating a train, no matter how many times you physically turn or change compass directions in the room, you're still either looking north or south. Even though you're looking multiple directions, you need to think in terms of either am I looking north or am I looking south at the railroad? If the engineer knows he is always looking railroad north, and railroad north is probably the most popular one, he knows everything to his left is west and everything to his right is east. Again, think of it like a map. If you're standing looking at a map and north is up at the top of the map there, obviously west is going to be on your left side and east is going to be on the right side. That's the simplest I can make it, guys. Simplest I can describe it to you. When the dispatcher notifies the engineer he has a meet with a westbound train, the operator, knowing that he's standing in a railroad north layout, the operator automatically knows the meet will happen with a train coming at him from his right side. The other way to think about it there. He doesn't have to, think, oh, gee, is a train coming? Where's the train coming from? Does it come from the left? Does it come from the right? As long as he knows that it's a westbound and this is a railroad north track plan or layout, he knows exactly where it's going to be coming from. Okay, What's the best kind of plans to use for prototypic or directionally pure layouts? The best is always a point-to-point with staging. Second is always the walk-alongs with staging, and the around-the-wall center peninsulas. They're kind of third, but with staging, they work fine. The worst plans, as I always say about them, continuous running. If you've got a continuous running plan and you don't have any staging, then the trains are simply running in circles. You won't convince me any other way. They can't go somewhere and they can't come from somewhere. All they can do is run around in a circle. That's all that can happen. So point to point, walk along, and around the wall are the three best ones for what we're talking about. Now, I think everybody here tonight that's watching this knows whose layout this is. This, of course, is Bill's Catastrophe Railroad, the South Brooklyn, but it's the best example I can give you of a true point-to-point layout. There's no continuous running on this layout. Everything starts either at point A, which is open staging on Bill's layout, or it starts at point B, which is the Brady Yard. And the trains simply run between the two of them there. Now, as I go on here in a couple more slides, you're going to find out that Bill's layout is what's called a railroad south. And I'll explain to you why it's a railroad south when we get to a slide here in just a couple minutes here, a couple seconds here. But again, this is Bill's true point-to-point layout. Again, and on this layout, everything starts either at point A or point B. There, doesn't start anywhere else. Okay, deciding what direction, north or south on that. The prototype, if you're modeling a prototype railroad, the decision's made for you. Is the prototype is going to run a certain direction, and you don't have to worry about it. If you're doing a freelance railroad, the geographical makeup will decide it. And that's what's happening with Bill's layout here. Is Bill's is a kind of a freelance fictitious railroad, but it exists in a place in the world, and that affects whether it's going to be a railroad north or railroad south. Compass direction of the layout doesn't matter, doesn't make any difference. Compass direction, the operator is standing, doesn't make any difference. It's geographically how's the layout set up. Okay, now I'm going to blow this up just a little bit here, and this will help. Bill's Railroad is a railroad south. And why do I say that? Well, the South Brooklyn Railroad obviously is in Brooklyn, or close to it anyway. Bill, if I'm wrong on any of this, you jump in here, okay, if I'm saying something that's not true.
Absolutely, not so far so good.
When we were deciding on an operating plan for this layout, the first thing we had to decide, or excuse me, I wanted to know was, do we have a railroad south or a railroad north layout? Now think about this for a minute. The railroad is in South Brooklyn. Based on the geography of this country, there's not much east of South Brooklyn. There's not a whole lot of railroads that can come into this layout. So almost everything that's going to come on to Bill's layout is going to come either from the west or the south there. So what I would say with this railroad, again, repeating myself, it's a railroad south, which means this. If you look up at the top there and you see the yard, you see that I've got two arrows. I've got an arrow facing east and I've got an arrow facing west there. Now, the arrow facing to the west is actually facing right. Everything on Bill's layout comes from the west and goes east. So this staging yard here, anything that comes out of this staging yard is eastbound towards Brooklyn. Likewise, if anything that comes out of Brady Yard down there is the reverse of that. It's heading westbound there because Brady Yard is kind of at the end of this railroad. And so we can't go east any further, but so what do? We're going back west. What you notice with the operators I've got on here is it doesn't make any difference where they're standing. East is to their left, west is to their right. No matter what direction they're standing, that's true. And if you know that when you're operating on this layout, that no matter where I'm standing, I'm looking south. I'm looking dead south. It makes it a whole lot easier to know where east and west is at that point. Okay. Continuous run track plans. Can a continuous run track plan operate as a railroad north or railroad south? Yes, it can, but continuous running can't be the primary objective of the track plan. Running in circles doesn't work for a directional layout. It's very hard to do. That said, I'm going to show you one here that is a continuous run in a second, but it's not designed to be run as a continuous run layout. This is a layout I designed for a gentleman that depicts the C&O Railroad Hamilton subdivision. It runs between Cincinnati, Ohio and Indianapolis, Indiana. Cincinnati and Indianapolis are represented by open staging on this layout. The towns between the two cities have real names and are placed in geographical order on this layout. So this layout's based on a prototype. Okay, this looks very similar to a lot of track plans that I've done, a lot of track plans that I do. We've got around the wall, center peninsula, but we do have continuous running on this layout, and trains can go around in a circle. They don't kind of look like they go in a circle, but they just go and they can go in a circle. But for an operating session, we don't get concerned about the fact that you can't have continuous running. We had a very small room here. This room is, I think, barely 10 feet wide. It's about 20 some feet long, so we had enough length, but we just didn't have any width to work with here on the layout. So we had to be real careful about. I didn't have room to put in a helix, things like that, to where we could put some hidden staging. So at the top of the layout here, at the very top of it there, you see that the blue lines are two tracks that represent Cincinnati, Ohio. Just below that are two tracks that represent Indianapolis. Now, this is a true north track plan, because if you think about this line running from Indianapolis to Columbus, or from Columbus to Indianapolis, either direction, everything is going to be east-west. Excuse me. So what I've done is anything that leaves Columbus, Ohio, off of those two blue tracks up on top are going to be heading westbound, because Indianapolis is west of Columbus, Ohio there. So the traffic going to your left is going to be west, traffic going to the right is going to be east. So just the reverse happens with the two red staging tracks. That's Indianapolis, and they're going to go out of staging going to the right or to the east is what happens. Now, again, the towns that you see named on here, you see Morristown, Rushville, Connorsville, Liberty, so on. Those are towns that do exist on this line, and they are in geographical order. The town of Connorsville is the major switching point on this layout. How we do prototype operations on here is trains come in from either Indianapolis or Cincinnati, drop off cars at Connorsville and pick up cars, and then continue on their way. Or they can go back the other direction, depending on what the operating plan is for this layout. The client also wanted an interchange track, so we put an interchange track down in the lower left-hand corner. He also wanted interchange with the Indianapolis Belt Line, which is up in the upper right-hand corner, which was a real railroad. So I put in a little short track in there that we can actually use during an op session for interchange if we want to. But what I wanted to show you here, guys, was simply this is a continuous running track plan that we don't even think about using it for continuous running when we're having an op session. What does the client want to use the continuous run for? The way he described it to me was he was basically just going to break in engines doing that. Just to get new engines broke in. He wasn't even really interested in just watching trains run. He wanted an operating layout is what he wanted. Now, we'll go to the next slide here. This is kind of part 2 of this, and this part of the program here, guys, is going to be kind of a quickie talk about the evolution of this track plan that I designed. There's going to be a lot more detail in the upcoming eMag. I've kind of combined this program with the eMag, with an article in the eMag. So I'll go over some things here that I will probably go much more detail in the eMag. What happened with this track plan, this evolution of this track plan, was I had a client get a hold of me, and he had some specific things that he wanted. Well, I didn't listen very well. After this all happened, I kind of sat down and thought about, you got to be real careful about what you're doing here. So when you're designing track plans for other people, first thing you've got to do is listen to your client. Listen to what they're saying. Design what the client wants. Don't design what you think they ought to have. There. That's where I really got into a problem with this one here. Design what the client is capable of building. And this will come up as I show you the various iterations we went through to design this track plan. And as always, design it so for operations. Just don't design it as a display layout. Okay, this is the space I had to work with. It looks like a pretty good space. It was 32 feet long and it was 14 feet wide. That's a lot of space. And that looks like a great place to put a railroad in. At least that's what I thought anyway. We had a lot of obstructions that we had to deal with. We had an exterior door at the bottom left-hand corner where the door swung into the room. That can create a problem. We had 2 interior doors. One was in the storage room and one was where the sump pump and the water heater was. Both of those doors swung out into the room. They didn't swing in, they swung out. There. The utility room that contained the water heater and the sump pump, obviously we needed to have access to that, so we couldn't be blocking that off. The other unique thing about this basement was in the lower right-hand corner, there was an electrical panel. I can blow this up a little bit down here and you can kind of see it. There, it's set behind a set of bifold doors, and not only was it the electrical panel for the whole house, it also included a whole house Wi-Fi system there. So there had to be access to that panel. Well, I thought access meant crawling under the layout and getting to it. The client had a much different idea. But the other thing that was, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was major, but it was a concern, was where you see this little red square up here. That was a wall heater. That was an electric wall heater that hung on the wall. And we couldn't do anything with that. We had to stay away from that, basically. We couldn't cover it up or put anything over the top of it. So I had some limitations of what to do here. Well, based on what the client wanted, this is what I decided he should have for that space. He wanted the steam era. He wanted it to be a proto-freelance design, both freight and passenger service. He wanted branch line operations. He wanted a walk along main line. He wanted a long main line run. We wanted hidden staging. We wanted numerous industry locations, and he didn't want this. This is what I decided, was multiple peninsulas with view blocks on them, a sorting yard, and the ability for up to 4 operators to operate this. So this is what I came up with. The branch line was actually the long, skinny track you see along the bottom of the room there that goes over to the left side, and that was going to be just an industrial area there for the branch line. But that was what the branch line was going to be. Now, this was going to be a true walk along track plan. Operators had to walk with it there. The only funky thing about it, at least I thought was kind of funky, was where we had to go into where the sump pump and the water heater was to get continuous running, because again, the client was interested in that. We had to make a lift out here that was a double track. The track went one direction going across, came back across the different direction there, but we got it accomplished. So I send this to the client and I get an email back in just a day or so. And he said, I think he says something to the tune of interesting. Well, anytime somebody tells me the plan is interesting, I've got a problem. Something's not good on that as soon as they say that. Well, he got back to me and he said to me, he said, it's a little too complicated. And this is what his concerns were. It was a radical departure from what he had envisioned. He wanted a simpler design. The bench work looked, at least to him, way too complicated to build. There were too many lift outs and there was poor access to the electrical panel. Now I'm going to back up here just a second. What I had was you had to crawl underneath the layout to get that access panel. And he didn't want that at all. Well, that created major problems. Well, I decided that I could talk him into crawling underneath of it. So I came up with version 2 of this. What did I do? I got rid of the 3 peninsulas. I went with a single peninsula, got rid of the branch line, even got rid of staging on this. Went with what I thought was a pretty simple design that would give him the longest mainline run possible. Well, guess what? It didn't work. He came back to me the second time and he says to me, it's still not what he had envisioned. The bench work is still too complicated. There's still too many lift outs, and there was still the poor access to the Wi-Fi panel. So I think you guys are getting the idea now that I really wasn't listening very well to this client, and I'll admit it, I really wasn't. So what I did is I went back to square one, and I reread everything he had sent me, thought about it for a little bit, and says, okay, we got to make some major changes here on this. So what did I do? On version 3, which was accepted by the client, you'll see it here in the next slide, it contains only one lift out. And the client did understand that we had to have at least one lift out on the layout. It was completely unavoidable. We couldn't do it. We did make easy access to the electrical panel and Wi-Fi system for him now. We simplified the bench work. We added a branch line operation. We added an interchange operation. We have totally prototypical operations on this layout. And I added 2 hidden staging yards with reverse loops. Now, you've looked at the first 2 plans and you're thinking, how the heck did I simplify this and get all this into it, including 2 hidden staging yards with reverse loops? Well, here's the plan. I'll blow this up a little bit so we can see it here. Now, what this plan does, and what I didn't realize at the time when I was designing, was he had access to this closet under the stairway here. I didn't realize that. He told me that later on. As soon as he told me that, then the light bulb went off in my head and I says, wait a minute, we can put staging in there and it was wide enough, we can put a reverse loop in. Looked over on the right side and says, son of a gun, I can do exactly the same thing on that side. But what was the major change with this thing? The whole rest of the layout. Again, this is a pretty big departure from what I normally do, but this layout is directionally pure. This layout will operate prototypically, and he loves the plan. It turned out exactly what he wanted. There, we've actually increased. This is the branch line up here. What I've got here, this is the main line running through here. What I've got over here on the right side is the interchange. And this interchange plays a huge role in this operating of this track plan, because everything that comes off of the branch line or goes to the branch line, again, we're back to what I always talk about, going somewhere or coming from somewhere. Everything that comes off of the branch line will be switched out at the interchange yard here. It will not go over to the main yard. It'll all happen here. So when we start this op session, we'll have 3 or 4 trains sitting in this staging, 3 or 4 trains sitting in the other staging over there. When I say 4, you can use the reverse loop for 1 or 2 trains also. You don't have to leave that open there. So trains will come onto this layout from either the east or the west there, and they will come through an area over here that we designed, and I'll explain this to you in a little bit, because this is one of his favorite things over here. This is our lift out. Only lift out I have on the layout now, but that had to be there because of that door that goes to the outside that's down below there. Then the track comes into a yard here, and this is where cars get switched out, get changed around, and then the through freights just continue through the layout into staging. Same thing happens whether we're doing eastbound or westbound. But this layout can easily, guys, keep 4 operators busy all the time for probably 3 hours or a 4-hour op session. Now, some of the things that he wanted on this layout that we did get included in it was, one of them is right here on this side. He wanted a nice farm scene, just a real nice farm scene, which is what I put in there for him. We're also doing steam era, no diesels. This is going to be probably the early 1940s, late 1930s. So I had to put in 2 turntables because everything's going to be running steam. So when trains left the branch line here, got down to the interchange, there had to be a way to turn the engines so they could run back to the branch line. So I put in a turntable over here, which can turn the engine around. And then the engine can work the interchange, and then it can leave and go the right direction back up the branch line. Up at the branch line, we had to put a turntable in up there because you got to have a way to turn the engines up at the branch line. So it has 2 turntables. They operate for the branch line primarily. That's all they're used for there. Then this is the main yard here on the left side of it, with numerous industries. And a lot of these industries are industries that he wanted to have. As an example, down here is a stockyard. And it isn't that we've got a packing plant on this layout. He's just going to have a stock train that runs, that is hauling cattle from one location to the next. Well, if you go back and you read about the late 30s and early 40s, they could only travel so many miles before those cattle had to be watered and fed. So we've created an operating thing here with the stock yards, where the train puts the stock cars onto that track. They empty them out so they can feed them. Then what they do is, when that gets done, they come back and either another train will pick it up or that, and they'll pick up the cattle and on they'll go for their destination. Just a kind of an interesting little op thing. Because we're doing the 1930s and 40s, we didn't have mechanical reefers back then. So anything perishables had to be shipped in wooden reefers. So we have an icing platform right here where cars will get iced as they travel across the railroad. There. We have a coal mine up here, which will bring coal down to the interchange. Then the coal will get switched out into cars going off layout, going into either staging yard. But I also did include a power plant down here for this town that sits right here. And a few of those coal cars from that the gravel pit will go off layout. The coal cars will come onto the layout from staging. Originally, I had that as a coal mine, but then we decided it didn't work very good, look very good up there. So I converted it to a gravel, which will simply create gravel traffic. So the coal will come onto the layout via staging. Over here on this side here, he wanted a tobacco or produce warehouse. So I put one in here for him that is going to have to be scratch built, but he wanted something to do with tobacco or produce. Then over here is going to be a custom built building here, which is going to be the Hershey chocolate factory in the early 40s, late 30s. Why is that? Because this gentleman lives just a few miles from Hershey, Pennsylvania. So you had to have the Hershey chocolate plant on this railroad. So that's what we put on there and that. And again, there is continuous running if you wanted to use the reverse loops, but that's not what it's designed for. These staging yards with the reverse loops were designed so that you could easily restage the trains. During an off session, what would happen at the beginning of an off session in both staging yards, you would have trains lined up ready to come out onto the layout there. During the off session, when a train left the visible part of the layout, went into staging, it would just simply go in and they would park it in there and that train wouldn't run again. It would just simply be done for that off session. After the off session is over with, then what the owner of the layout would do is he'd go into the staging area and he would simply back this train out, back it on out here, run it around the reverse loop, back it back in, change the car cards if that's the system he's using to move cars, and that train is ready to go for the next off session. This layout, the way I've got it planned out, he will be able to run from a minimum of 8 trains in an off session to probably as many as I would say a dozen trains, because we have to think about the trains that are going to run on the layout down here to service these industries that we have down here. Plus, we're going to have a train on the branch line. So we can easily, on this layout, run a dozen trains during an off session, which would mean in a normal off session, at least 3 hours could easily go into 4 hours of running time and that. So this is kind of the evolution of from what you've seen me do originally, which was clear back here, which I thought was pretty cool, pretty neat looking, to going from that to this. And I actually produced for this client a much, much better track plan than what I had ever envisioned there. It was, at least I think it's a much better one. And the fun part is a departure from what I normally do. Again, in the e-magazine, there's going to be a lot more detail about this, what I did here, plus the mistakes I make and the mistakes I see people make when they're designing layouts and things like that. So I'm giving you all the detail. You're going to have to get the e-mag to catch everything else that's here. Billy, that's my story.
All right,
that's your story. That's your story, and you're sticking to it, Bill?
I'm not going to change it. I'm going to leave it there. Okay. And I'll be happy if there's any questions. Somebody wants to ask some questions. I'll be happy to try to answer the questions for you guys.
We got a couple here. Lee in California wanted to know, do you do switching layouts?
Yes, I have done switching layouts. Usually I call them shelf layouts. I think that's what they are, or a modular type layout. This is a switching layout, and it would have ended up being a switching layout if we wouldn't have been able to put those hidden staging yards in. On this particular track plan here, those hidden staging yards make the layout. That's what makes it work there.
Yeah, Lee is in the process of doing his bench work right now. and he's doing strictly around the wall. He's got a little 3-year-old that right now he's using the framework for a jungle gym.
I've watched Lee on some of the hangouts, and I know that he's not totally into operations. He likes to watch trains run, and there's just nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, this wasn't going to be a circle. It's going to be a point to point.
Point to point, yeah.
Yeah, because of the entry door coming in. And it's best I remember, kind of a big area.
Well, if you think about it, the true layouts that are truly operate prototypically are point to point layouts. The trains come from somewhere and they go somewhere. They can't do anything else but that. And then lots of things happen in between where they come from and where they go to. But basically, that's what a point-to-point does. There now, I'm a big fan of a point-to-point layout having staging at either end, because you increase your operating, not ability, but you increase your operating options by a huge magnitude. Again, look at this layout here. Again, I'm just in the staging, we're going to run 8 trains minimum.
You could actually, if you think about it, on both the hidden staging, that's another job for another operator.
Could be. Yeah, but usually with hidden staging, the way that I'm used to operating out here where I live, once the train goes into staging, after it's run on the layout, that train's done. That train doesn't run anymore. I operate on a layout where we have two staging yards, one up and one down, and the train you take out of staging, if it runs the whole layout and goes into, say it comes out of lower staging and ends up in upper staging, I put it up, I bring it out of lower staging, I do what I'm supposed to do with it on the layout, then it eventually goes into upper staging. When it's into upper staging, I dispatch it out of the Digitrax system, turn the power off to it, and that train is done for that op session. And then what happens is the owner of the layout, he restages the layout for the next session. That's done between op sessions. The reverse loop is there for continuous running to break in engines and do things like that. But its primary use is to just make it simple to restage. It just makes restaging the layout very, very simple.
Yeah.
What scale is this?
This is HO scale. Again, remember this room is 32 feet long. So it's a nice length of room.
Yeah, really.
And he wanted to work where you see the workbench up there. He wanted a workbench, and that was the other problem with my first 2 plans for him, was we had no place to put his workbench, and he wanted his workbench in the same room that the layout was in. So
that makes absolute sense.
Yeah. So what we were able to do, I worked around that, and we got that done. Even in this branch line operation up here that we've got, there's a lot of operating that can go on that branch line, because trains are going to come into there, and then I've got runaround tracks and everything. This can do, there's a lot of things that can happen up here. This one little area right here can keep an operator busy for a couple hours. They're running trains without any problem. We've got a grain elevator, we got a fuel depot, I've got a freight house, we've got the gravel plant there. We've got another livestock stockyards thing here. Plus, we got to turn the engines, so we got to service those engines. So I've got a sand house and a water tank here. So the engines, because again, remember, this is all running steam. There's no diesels being run here. Was there another question, Johnny?
Yeah, that's from our buddy Newcastle Cohen.
Yes, sir. Love him.
Yeah, we can't do without him.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Why don't you move over to where the Hershey is? And yeah, I'll start with that one first. Let me. All right, he said at the Hershey, add 2 tracks so there's more spots. It's a large facility in real life, but being in that time period, having a smaller facility, I think would work.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's talking about adding 2 more tracks in there.
Well, we discussed that, and the client and I did, and what we came up with basically was, how big was it in the 30s? Well, I don't know. It was big, obviously. How much rail traffic came into it? I tried to find some pictures online and really didn't find it. And this was really more of just a fun thing, because he lives not too far from Hershey, Pennsylvania. Wanted to have the Hershey plant on there. So I says, well, I'll just put in a building in there that you can scratch build whatever you want to scratch build, and that. And
Yeah.
And again, I've said this railroad will run, and I think this is something that Newcastle needs to realize too. This is designed so that 4 operators could run it. He's telling me right now that probably it would just be him and maybe one other person running this layout. So if there's only 2 people running this layout, there's more than enough to do here.
Oh, yeah. I think this next one's going to pertain to that interchange yard out there on the peninsula.
Interchange yard is right here. This is the interchange.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it might be part of that out on the peninsula. Let's see. He said, "Can you extend the turntable so there's a yard lead off the interchange yard, and to fix the bottleneck, add a lift bridge where the bridge is on the peninsula?"
Yeah, we thought about putting a lift in there, but you have to again remember this client. He was just adamant about not having lift outs. He just didn't want it. And the thing that I did here that I designed, there's not a lot that goes on right over in here. Plus what I failed to show you guys, and it is kind of damn important, sorry for that. This is a 24-inch aisle down here now, so that he can get to the Wi-Fi and the electrical panel without crawling under anything. Well, as soon as we made that decision to put that aisle in there, then I didn't care that this did what it did here, because there's more than enough room for an operator to work the interchange yard right here. And these doors, these bifolds are always going to be closed, so he can get all the way over to here, and he can run trains in and out of staging. And again, when we got a hidden staging yard, I'm always assuming that we've got tortoise switches or servos or something operating those turnouts. So everything goes into staging or comes out of staging with the tracks all lined. It wouldn't be mechanical or hand thrown. It would be again, tortoises, servos, or whatever.
Yeah, remote control.
Be remote control, bottom line.
Yeah.
There. But again, with this aisle in here, that allowed us to access to all of this interchange track. And see, one of the things I would do with this layout, if there was say 3 operators or 4 operators, I would have one person in charge of the interchange up here, of the branch line, one person in charge of the interchange, one person in charge of the main yard here, and then the 4th person can run trains on the layout and that. Or one of the 3 here, the interchange track doesn't need to be worked unless there's a train coming into the interchange there. And you don't necessarily need a dedicated interchange person, because most interchanges don't have dedicated engineers sitting there. But a yard does, and that branch line has enough operations up there, you'd want a dedicated operator up there.
Yeah.
Bring trains in and out.
Sparky 107-107, he's got a comment here. On this layout, I would add a industry bottom right corner down the wall, double track, grain mill, or something similar.
Well, if he's talking here, you can't do it. Yeah. That's where the electrical panel is.
Yeah.
And two things about electrical panels. One, it's not wise to run things in front of them. And two, depending on what part of the country you live in, it's not code to have those covered up.
No, nationwide, the code is you have to maintain an open space in front of your electrical panel that is 6 feet high, however wide or 36 inches wide, and 6 feet out.
Okay. Well, see, we wouldn't necessarily be in code here.
No, but you still got pretty good size access there, so code inspector would probably let that go.
Yeah, if unless you had an inspector that wanted to be a tough guy or something.
Yeah, hard nose.
Yeah, that's right.
Bill?
Yeah.
Bill, on that scene that we're looking at right now, opposite on the upper part, is that another turntable that's in place?
Right here. Turntable here. And what that is there for, because again, we're doing steam. When a train leaves the branch line, comes down here to the interchange, and again, the way I envision this to operate is trains coming from the branch line, interchange cars at the interchange yard here. They don't run over to this other yard to the left. Everything happens right here. So let's just use an example. We've got cars that have been picked up at these industries up here at the branch line, and this train's been made up on these tracks that are up here. So now the engineer gets his engine, and he comes down this track here, and he gets down to the yard. Okay, this track you see here is used for two things. One of the things is when the train comes down here, this is a double slip switch right here. The train goes up into here, backs into here with his train, because he'll probably be leaving all the cars on this interchange track. That's the only thing that is going to be switched by that. What will be on the interchange track, probably on this track here, it can be the one that doesn't make a difference, will be cars that are going to industries up on the branch. Those got left overnight by trains that were running on the layout. So there would be X number of cars here. So after the operator from the branch line comes down, goes into here, backs his cars onto one of these two tracks here, then he goes back up, turns the engine around, gets it going the right direction, gets new sand, new water, comes down, comes out onto here, and then backs out onto the main line, runs down the main line, comes back over, hooks onto this, assuming these are the cars that were left the night before, hooks onto the cars here, backs back up this track here, turns the switches, and then heads right back up the branch line to do its thing. Think about that. That probably right there from start to finish could easily take 45 minutes to an hour.
Absolutely.
Just to run that.
I think there's enough work here without adding. I get what our community is saying. They see it. It's like everything else. You want to build a bigger, better mousetrap. But when you look at the overall existence of this track plan, there's enough here to keep you busy without trying to add any more.
Yeah, and you know that personally, Bill, from what I designed for you.
Yes.
You got a lot of railroad in the small space there.
My staging yard alone is an hour.
Yeah.
Switching in and out of the sand and Brooklyn sand and gravel, as well as getting trains ready.
I think it's also important to remind people, and I do this almost every show, when I talk about operating, I'm talking about doing things prototypically. And one of the best things you can do prototypically is run your trains at prototypical speeds. Example for this branch line, that train probably would never run over 20-25 miles an hour coming down.
If that.
So if you run it at 20 miles an hour, then you get down and you do your switching the way you're supposed to do your switching. It eats up a lot of time. And we're not even talking here. All we're talking about is interchanging cars down on this interchange. We're not talking about when you take those cars back up to the branch line. Now you've got to switch them out at all those industries.
And it also depends too on the unhidden part, the operation part. If he puts hand throws, you know,
right
in there where he has to physically throw, or finger flicking where he has to, other than, you know, if he does it with an electronic, with tortoise or servos or anything like that.
I always push, and you know, you and I have talked about this, Bill. I always push the bane of all model railroading is time. There, you can't emulate time. So I'm a huge fan of, especially on this railroad here, and plus you save a hell of a lot of money. Everything should be a ground throw on this layout, except in the hidden staging yards. Everything should be ground throw, because there's not a switch on this layout you can't reach by hand. There's no place here that the reach is so far you can't get to it, and that's all.
How wide is with
this right here?
Operators.
Yeah, right here is about 24 inches wide. Right here, and this aisle is 24 inches here, and that, which is wide enough because no one's going to be going behind this operator. The operator that's operating there, like I've got the figure in there, he can go up and down that whole thing because the branch line operator is going to be over on the other side. He's going to be behind you there.
Right.
And
it also makes sense. It also makes sense if you, like he stated, I'm only one other operator, another friend, so he could absolutely operate the, you know, the lower half of this, and then he could physically turn around, and operate the upper level.
And if you wanted to kind of divide it up a little bit, right along this bottom edge of the branch line here, this south edge of the branch line, you could put about a 3-foot view block on there.
Yep.
So that nobody could see the branch line until they walked around the end of the peninsula there and looked at it.
Right.
And that would give the layout the feeling of a larger layout, make it feel larger.
Right.
But yeah, I just thought this was a good one to show people, because what you see on my website, what you see me design for a lot of people, I follow a pretty standard design. It all gets affected by the room shape and everything, but this one, and I have to be honest with everybody, this turned out much better than I thought it would. And I have to give the owner of this layout, the person I designed it for, the person that paid me, I have to give him a lot of credit, a lot of kudos, because he was right and I was wrong on this one.
Well, two things have there's a lot of things that came out of this. First of all, a lot of times the customers that you design for, in reality, want big railroads. Am I right?
That's right. Well, they want us. Two things have happened tonight with two of the comments, Bill. And think about this. And there's nothing wrong with what these guys said. It's perfectly fine what they said. Newcastle wanted more tracks going into the Hershey plant. Perfectly fine. But again, think of that mindset. More tracks. More things to switch. Sparky wanted wanted this space in the lower right-hand corner filled with an industry. Again, more tracks, more things. If you really would study this from an operational standpoint, there doesn't need to be any more industries on this layout. I didn't count them exactly, but we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because you don't even realize there's 3 there. There's 9, 10. I've got 10 industries, 11. I've got 11 industries to switch just on the main line. Doesn't even count the branch line.
Exactly.
So it's
I got a comment here from Andy, everybody's buddy. He loved the first plan. The final result is much easier to build, no doubt. But the first plan is really good, cynically interesting. long runs, etc.
Well, let's go back and look at it here. Andy's exactly right. This is a neat plan. Okay. Now think about this: is if I would have realized at the time, and I didn't at the time realize that I could use this space, we could have put staging in there and still maintain this particular design. And that.
Yeah, the electrical panel has still been the only problem.
Electrical panels are a problem because we didn't have enough space there. And again, most of the people that I've done these for, when I talk to them about these codes for electrical panels, they go, "Don't worry about it."
Yeah, that's I've run into that a lot.
Yeah, that's what they.
That's exactly right, because people want what they want.
They want what they want.
Yeah, and people like me, when I go in and do an inspection, boy, I tell you what, I got one heck of a disclaimer to protect myself on that electrical panel.
That's right. No, yeah, but this what this plan did here is this gave him the longest mainline run he could possibly have for the space that he had. And then if you think about it, put a long view block through this peninsula, put a view block in here, put a view block in here, and you've divided this railroad up into numerous, what I call them vignettes, little scenes that you do on the layout. You create scenes on here because with a view block running through the center of this long peninsula, the operator here and the operator here may only be about 7 feet apart, but they never see each other there, and they would feel like they're miles apart there. And then running one through this little short peninsula, again, we create vignette scene here, a vignette scene here, and it's completely separate of each other because of the view block running down the center.
You know, I after seeing the final version and seeing it, I'm a bigger fan of the final than I am of this one.
Well, the funny thing is, this one did create some problems that I couldn't get by. I really don't necessarily like this turn back here. I would have loved to have it over here, but we got a door right here.
Right, but just on the, I mean, I'm looking at it. You're looking at it from a stand. Your viewpoint is one of design. I'm looking at it from the standpoint of building and eventually operating. You see, what I know now, had I have my layout, I think I would have said, well, no, that first one would be the one I'd want, you know. But now, knowing what I know and operating on my layout and seeing this final version, I would enjoy this a lot more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and this is this layout here, Bill. At least yours, you can operate yours by yourself. It's not going to be fun to do it by yourself, but you could. This one here would be very hard to operate by somebody themselves, because they'd have to keep switching jobs all the time, doing something different. And
no, it would be a challenge, of course, but still. Yeah. But on my layout, all I do is I just crank the music up really high and just start.
I got a comment here from Scott G. He goes, I think he missed the passenger service. As I imagine it, the train will run back and forth, east and west, pretty much all the time, just to confuse things.
Well, yeah. Here, so Scott understands. I'll blow this up. There's the passenger depot right there, and the passenger depot happens to be right on the main line that runs through the layout. So what I told the client was, because he still did want passenger service, I probably should have mentioned it. I'm sorry I didn't do that. I told him these 3 tracks here and the 3 tracks in the other staging, those could be used for specific types of freight trains that would come on the layout. The reverse loop can be used for a passenger train, and you only need one. You don't need 2 passenger trains here, because what you can do is you can start out an op session with a passenger train on the reverse loop, sometime during the off session. It leaves staging here, comes out, runs over, comes over, and stops at the passenger depot. Loads and unloads passengers, then leaves and runs over and runs into staging and stops on the reverse loop. Now, remember what I said earlier. In an operating session for this layout, you don't restage trains going into staging there. You simply just run them in engine first and park them, because that train's done for that off session. But you can certainly use this reverse loop for the passenger train. And then a great example would be an AM and a PM passenger train. The morning passenger train comes out of here, runs over, stops, picks up, drops off passengers, continues on its way, and disappears into staging. Later in the off session, later on, whatever, an hour later, 2 hours later, whatever the case may be, now this passenger train has changed from a eastbound to a westbound train, passenger train. It's still the same train, but it's got a different number now. It's got a westbound number instead of a eastbound number. And it comes out, just does exactly the same thing. This time stops at the passenger depot, loads, unloads, and then continues across the layout, into the reverse loop, and it's done for that off session.
Kind of like our Amtrak here that runs up the East Coast. It runs, let's say at night, it's going north, in the morning it's coming south.
Exactly. And all you would do is simply change, if you use train numbers, and I think most people understand this, maybe there's some that don't. Any train that runs eastbound on a layout, a real railroad, has priority over westbound trains. So eastbound trains always get even numbers, westbound trains get odd numbers. Only way I ever remember that, because I'm not that smart, is east and even. That's the only way I can even remember that. But also eastbound trains, all eastbound trains are superior to westbound trains. And
back in that time period too, like AJ mentioned here in the comment they put in for somebody else, that your passenger trains were 15 cars,
right,
limited, or it could be even a little less than that, make it a local commuter, one
right,
operating session where you only ran about 2, 3, 4 cars.
That's right. Yeah, I'm designing a layout now for a gentleman where he wants some passenger service, but again, this is going to be like a early 50s layouts, transition era, and he's got a pretty nice branch line we're designing in. This is going to be a 3-level layout, so we're putting a passenger station up on the branch line on the upper level, and what he's going to do is the freight train is going to take up 1 or 2 passenger cars, leave them off at the depot. Then the freight train is going to continue to do its thing, and then those passenger cars will get picked up later in the day and brought back down to the main level of the layout or into staging. And then it's just going to be a couple cars on the end of a freight train, is what it amounts to.
Yeah.
And that's prototypical. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. You don't have to have a dedicated train. But yeah, Scott's exactly right. This layout here would work good with if you wanted to run about say an 8 to 10 car passenger train. That would look pretty nice running across here. And again, it would run twice during an op session.
Just real quick for Scott G, go to YouTube, and there's quite a number of videos there for building the lift out. He's a little doubtful about building the lift out, but actually lift outs are not all that terribly hard.
No, and you can build a lift out or you can build a drop down. You can actually do either one. When I design layouts, one of the things I always try to do is I try to maintain a lift out that's no longer than 30 inches long. Sometimes I'll do 36, but I don't like to. And the reason I try to maintain around 30-inch long lift outs is if the standard layout is going to be about 40 some inches off the ground, you can easily build a hinged drop down that would work well as opposed to a lift out. And I don't have any preference to one to the other. Doesn't make any difference. Some people like drop downs, some people like lift outs.
Yeah, I kind of got behind on the chat here, so.
Well, good. There are comments, right?
Yeah, catch up here. Yeah, there was another comment here. They were talking about swapping the caboose too, because back then you'd have a caboose on the train.
Absolutely. Yeah, you'd have to swap the caboose around. No question about that.
That would either be right there in the yards or the staging yards. You'd leave it while you turn the engine.
That's right. That's right. You can
catch it on the runaround, I guess.
Is the bottom line, as long as you build in runarounds, you can never get trapped. You can always figure out a way to do things. The reason, again, I put in the two turntables, I wouldn't have put those turntables in if this would have been say a late 50s, early 60s layout, because we would have been running diesels, and it's no problem to run diesels, cab forward, cab backwards. Matter of fact, in Pennsylvania, where this gentleman lives, and he's trying to do a little depicting of Pennsylvania, it was very common for the Pennsylvania Railroad. I don't know what the C&O did, but the Pennsy ran many of their diesels long hood forward.
Yeah, got one here. BNSF Buff says the track planner rocks.
Say that again.
He said you rock.
Oh. I thought, for a second, I thought he said Rob.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I do. I steal a lot of ideas from other people. Yeah. Believe me.
Well, we all do that. BNSF Buff says ground throws put into the layout. When's the last time a real railroader threw a switch from the edge of the world? Actually, this, like Big Bill said, this is back in the steam era, and that's what they did. They got out and threw the switches. That's
exactly right. Yeah,
they still do. If you, where I model in, South Brooklyn, the New York, New Jersey, they work off the pier, and they still do. Their yard down on 2nd and 1st Avenue, their whole yard is hand thrown. There's no tower, it's not electrified. So they still throw their switches down there.
Well, and the good thing about hand throwing turnouts on a model railroad is you're creating time. You're lengthening the time there, and we're trying to create time and distance on these things. So that's prototypical speed, ground throws, and if you really want to get totally goofy with this, and I operate on a layout where this happens, you come up within about 8 to 10 feet of a car, and you have to physically stop and then move forward before you couple on. You just don't keep moving, and bang, all of a sudden you couple up. You come up, you get about 8 or 10 scale feet away, you stop, and then you connect again.
You know why I'm laughing? Because I'm laughing because I just recently started. We just started doing some operations with my good friend Jerry, and Jerry and I are former train workers. And the first time we got together, and we were working on the layout, he actually was starting to put the train together. And I noticed I was watching him, and as he was backing the diesel into the boxcar, he kept going, he kept kicking the feet off. And I looked at him and I said, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Some habits die hard." And what he was doing was he was going 10 feet, 7 feet, 5 feet, stop. Because that's what we would do when we would switch the subway cars. We weren't allowed to come right up on it and hit it. And he made the best couple. It was the sweetest couple, the softest couple I ever saw. And he was like he turns and he looks at me and he goes, "I never believed in hard hitches." And then he gives it the stretch test. Then he gave it a stretch test to see if it was. I was like, Jerry, we're going to have a lot of fun on this railroad.
Well, you, everybody that's listening tonight, and you, Bill, and Johnny, we've all watched YouTube videos where people have been doing switching, and they'll bring the engine up, or they'll bring a train up, and they'll connect onto a boxcar or any other car, and they bang into it, and then the whole train goes another 2 or 3 inches before they get it stopped, and they go the other direction. Well, that's playing with toys. That's not being prototypical. That's not doing what the real railroad does.
No, that like I said, that was the best time, because when he did it the first day, I was listening. I was standing there and I heard him, and I was like, "You're actually going to do safety stops?" And he goes, "Yes. If we're going to do this prototypical, Bill, this is what we're going to do." But the best part was when he hooked up, and then he moved the controller, and you could see the engine stretch. And I was like, "Please don't tell me you're doing a stretch test." And he goes, "Absolutely. Absolutely."
Is that what you would call taking the slack out?
Yes, it was just making sure everything was hooked, the hoses, everything. So you take a stretch and it pulls, and you're securely. Because sometimes what happens is the couplers don't make up. You assume they do, and I've seen it because I've done it in real life where I pull away and it snaps. So,
Yeah.
So you learn from your mistakes. But it's interesting to do that, and it's something that I'm incorporating in the written instructions when people come over, that this is what's needed to be done. I know it sounds a little anal, but hey, if you're gonna do it, and just have fun with it too. It makes it a lot more interesting. Like you said, it's a time thing too. It's like. That was one of the discussions Jerry and I had when we decided we were going to do this, was, he's taking ownership. And one of the things was, do we want to rush through this, or do we want to really do, that was his suggestion. He said, "Do you really want to do prototypical operation?" And I said, yes. So that's part of it. And that's part of the time,
right.
Because, anybody, we all play, basically what it boils down to, we're playing with plastic trains. That's what it is.
We're playing make-believe.
We're playing make-believe, but they're plastic trains. But also in the same instance, how many out there, show of hands now, how many out there have actually worked on a real railroad? Not many. Not many. So, it's a little different. Some people would say to me, and I've had this conversation, I work for the New York City Transit Authority as a motorman. They say, "Well, that's not real railroading." Well, the last time I checked, when I had to throw a switch at 3 degrees outside, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning, that was as real as it got. So, it is what it is. But when you don't do it as a livelihood, and that's not to say that's not bad, but when you don't do it as a livelihood, and then you go and do it on a plane, to play with it, you want to add that realism, and you want to add that, that element to operating prototypically. And I think it goes back to what you said, Bill, that that's the time consuming, because if you do it that way, it adds to the time.
Yep.
Because ultimately, what are you doing prototypical operations? Just to go in, run trains in and out, put them in the industry, then come out again? Or is it that you're doing something with a purpose to it, and it doesn't matter how long it takes for you to get to the finish line?
I always tell people you need to create time and distance. You can have the best looking layout in the world, the most prototypical track plan, but you can't copy time and distance.
No, you cannot.
You can't do that. So that's where we got to get people to slow things down. One other interesting that I talked a few minutes ago about this layout where I'm doing a triple level one for a gentleman. As I do with all of my clients, I always ask them, are you operating on any other layouts? And most of the time, at least the people I work with, they're kind of loners. That's maybe not a good term, but they're doing a lot of things by themselves. And I highly, highly encourage them to, find a club. So I mentioned this gentleman is really into operations. That's the reason he contacted me, is he wanted a prototypically operating model railroad. So I asked him if he joined any clubs. No, he says, there's a couple in the area I've thought about going. And I said, please do, please go. And I says, if nothing else, watch an op session they have. Got an email from him yesterday, and he says, believe it or not, about a block and a half from him is a gentleman who has a model railroad in his basement that he never even knew about, and they hold weekly op sessions, and he's been invited to the next op session. And I wrote him back.
Great.
I said, that is terrific. I says, you're going to learn more at that op session than I can ever write you in 50 emails about operations. I says, you have to just go out and do it. Go out and have it happen.
I agree. I think that this hobby, I think with the help of everything that's coming along with this YouTube Model Builders channel and other, model railroad hobbyists and other, Trainmaster TV, YouTube, with Ken Anderson and What's Next and everything. I think it's helping to promote the hobby and get the modeler out of the basement. I really do. I mean, as much as most railroads are in basements and stuff like that in spare rooms, but
I operate on 4 layouts primarily where I live here, and we're operating and we're kind of serious about what we're doing, but it's really a social event. We have a great
absolutely.
Time. We just have
absolutely.
a ball.
And it gets you out. You get to meet other like-minded men, and
Right. I'll give you an example of one of them I operate on is, you see when you watch these op sessions on YouTube, you'll always see these guys running around with a tool bib on, and we use it to put car cards in and things like that. And then it's just easier to drop them into that if you got it tied around your waist. Well, one of the layouts I operate on, the owner of the layout has one of his bibs is pink there. And the deal is whoever screwed up in the last operating session, in the next operating session, has to wear the pink bib, and he keeps the pink bib until someone else screws up. And I want you to know that I've been known to wear the pink bib through 2 op sessions at his okay, because nobody wants the bib. Nobody wants the put it on. So.
Yeah, there was comment out there, and I can't remember who made it, but they were saying that this layout you have here presented now is more of a switching operations type layout. The very first design you came up with, they said that would be more of a rail fanning type operation.
Well, that's true, Johnny, and that's true. What they need to understand about those pictures I showed there is these are totally without any yards, any industries. What I do here is I send this to the client and say, okay, here's my general thought. Here's my general concept. Now, if they accept it and they think it's a good idea, now you got to come back with all of your view blocks. You got to figure out industries, and yes, it's still a viewing layout, but this layout here could have easily, if I would have designed this and someone would have built this could have took 6 or 7 operators, not 3 or 4 there, because there's just a lot of places where a lot of things can be going on. And what you're seeing here on these is just simply my general idea of how I want the main line to run without all the other extraneous things being put in there.
Yeah.
That's true, even with this one here, which is, much more simple. I tell you, the reason I wanted to do this show is I'm really happy for this client that it turned out the way it did, because I've given him a much better railroad. I've given him much more opportunities to do things. And one of his primary goals was he wanted it to be relatively easy to build. And I think this will be fairly easy to build for him.
Yeah, L-girder will take care of most of it.
Yeah, this is really no big deal. I mean, this is what we did. Go ahead, Bill.
You mean to say I could even build it?
Yep, you could do it, Billy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matter of fact, you see, up in here, I even put in an access area where he could crawl underneath if he needed to. And then that's the only place that would be there. And I got one written in, but not drawn in over here.
Yeah. One of our guys that comes in the Hangouts pretty regular, he's over in Washington State, Trainman Clancy.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got something a little unique on his layout. He does have a lift out, but it's motorized. He put a cable on the end of it, attached it to a motor. He can sit over at his operating panel and raise and lower the lift out.
That's pretty slick.
Yeah, if he wants to do a continuous run, he lets it down. But when he's doing his point-to-point operations, he'll pull it up.
Yeah, great idea. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, see, originally again, we looked at this room earlier. Originally, this the client here wanted 0 lift outs. Well, you can see what would have happened here if I would have gone with 0 lift outs. This whole side of the layout, or this whole area here, would have went away.
Yeah.
There. And having the 2 staging yards at each end of the layout is what makes this work prototypically. This is what makes this work.
Well, I'm glad that he compromised.
Yeah, well, we finally did. We worked out fine. Oh.
Yeah. Well, you're coming up on an hour and a half there.
Well, that's I'm actually done unless if somebody has questions, I'll be more than happy to stay here and answer them for them.
No, I think we're pretty well done on those.
Okay. Well, we're trying to do hour-and-a-half shows, aren't we?
Thereabouts, yes.
Yeah, we're trying.
That's what we're trying.
Yeah.
Well, would you say, John, it's time for us to say goodnight?
I would say we're getting there, yes.
I think so too. Bill, I want to thank you so very, very much for putting the time and effort into bringing this to tonight's show. You know, it's greatly appreciated, and also we appreciate it all you do for the community.
Well, and let's remind everybody that, you know, I have a business and I run it like a business, but I'm never afraid to answer questions. If somebody has a question, all they got to do is go to my website and email me. I'll be happy to answer it.
Yes, I will attest to that. You can, even if you do not solicit Bill to build a layout. If you have a question in regards to operation or track planning, he'd be more than happy to help you and assist you in anything that you need. Greatly appreciated. And once again, Tuesday night show is changed to a new time. Want to get that out there as often as possible so that you guys can put it down in your calendars. Tuesday night shows are going from now going on at 8 p.m. Central Time and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Thursday night hangout is remaining the same time, 9 p.m. Central and 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the Saturday live show, the third Saturday of every month, will be at the regular time at 9 p.m. Central and 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that show that we're doing and the live show will be this Saturday, the 21st. You don't mind if I give it a plug, do you, John?
No, we got a week from this coming Saturday. That'll be the live show a week from this coming Saturday.
Yeah, so we're gonna have Brian Burke on, and he's gonna show us his Landsberg and Great Western Railroad in HO scale. Brian is, if you guys remember, if you've watched him on YouTube, he built a room in his previous home, and then he moved, and now he's building it in his garage. So we're gonna have Brian on, and Brian's gonna go over the changes that made and what he's doing into his new railroad and some new things and stuff like that. Also, we have some really good things coming up on the YouTube Model Builders Hangouts on the Tuesday in the future, and I think in February
7th.
February 7th, we're going to start the fine scale build. We're going to be putting information out on that pretty soon in regards to what we're going to do what we're going to build, and that's going to be hosted by Miles Hale and Andy Crawford and Barry Rose, and it's going to be a build along, and to which we're going to invite you, the community, to participate and be a part of the build. And it's a simple wood kit build. It's not going to be extraordinaire or anything off the charts, but just to get you guys introduced to it, into doing some wood build kits and stuff like that. So yeah, that's going to come on.
Hands-on experience.
And your own experience at your own time. It's going to be sort of like a video workshop that Miles conducts when he's up in Springfield. And I've been in those, and everybody goes to, I've been in some of his workshops, and everybody goes at their own pace. So there's no, if you're just starting in the hobby and you're not too sure, what, of your skill level, but you're not like, I can do a plastic out of the box kit, this is similar to that, except it's what you go at your own pace and no pressure, just we're going to give you the tools that you need, a whole list of things that you do, and we're going to try to keep it on the cheap, but like everything else, most of you guys have the tools in your house and and stuff like that, and we're going to give you the kit to build and stuff like that. So look for that in the future. Actually, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing a promo of it, a video, and putting it out there, and also of the material. So look for it on our YouTube Model Builders website, as well as on the G Plus page, okay? And also the second thing we're going to do, and that's started by Chris Healy of MRL Trains, is that we're going to do the Adreno, and it's going to be the Adreno workshop, and that's going to come up on what's that, January 25th?
Yes.
It's going to be on January 25th. We're also going to do a promo on that, and how to get a starter kit. You can one up at Amazon or eBay, but we'll have more information with that. You noticed I'm not giving everything away here, and I don't want to give everything away. I want to whet the appetite. I want you guys to think about this, and also be aware that this is a result of us asking you what you guys wanted. We last year, if you remember, me, John, Andy, we're jumping on the Hangouts, your personal private Hangouts, and we were asking you what you wanted, and the majority of we listened to what you said, and this is what we've come up with in the span of time that we got together, and all of us put our brains together, and sometimes we come up with a half an idea, but I think we really listened to you guys this time, and we're going to do this. So we're doing the fine scale build in February, and we're coming up on January 25th. That's a Wednesday, and what we're hoping to do with the Adreno, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yes, Adreno.
Adreno.
Yeah.
See, that's the New Yorker in me. I go right for the abbreviation, Adreno.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, it's Italian.
That doesn't make a difference to me. If you don't speak Brooklynese, forget it. I don't even know that. I have a hard time understanding you when you're speaking English. You're from the South. I get like, what? But that's another story. We'll talk after the show. The Adreno workshop, that's going to be hosted by Chris of MRL Trains, and is going to be a build-along show. And for all of those that you wish to use the Adreno, you can get into that, and it's going to be great. And that's going to take place. We don't have, if I'm correct, John, that's going to take place when we don't have the Tuesday night show, like what's going to fill in?
Yeah, it's basically a schedule. I got a schedule where it's falling in between the Tuesday shows in the off week for the Tuesday. The Adreno show is going to fill in that off week.
Right, and that's also going to be 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the fill-in that, when we took away the show and we went every other Tuesday, because most of you guys were like, hey, how was the show? We want to see a show. So this is the fill-in for that. So stay tuned for all of that. We're going to hopefully get that off the ground in the next couple of weeks. Look for it on the YouTube Model Builders website. Also look for the promos that are going to come out on G Plus page. Also, just to remind you, e-mag is coming out at the week of the 15th of January. It's a free e-mag. So if you're not subscribed, please go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com, sign up for with your email. And basically what you're telling us when you sign up is that yes, you want the information, so we will give it to you. We don't share your email with anybody else, just so you know that. We don't sell it. We don't give it to anybody else. It's just primarily YouTube Model Builders. So the eMag will be coming out the week of the 15th, and it tops every time you think we see the eMag. You know, JD and his crew presented to us guys prior to its release, and we just like, how are you going to top last 2 months eMag? And he does. Him and his guys, they simply outdo it. So please, if you want to get it, do it. You'll also see Bill Beranek's piece that he did tonight will be more better explained and more elaborated and extended in this e-magazine that's coming up. Let's see. That's basically it. We want to thank you guys for tuning in, for your participation in the community, and for your Q&A. As for me, I wish you best and Happy New Year to everybody out there in January of 2017. May it be a prosperous one, a blessed one, and a most healthy one. From myself, Bill Beranek, the track planner, and from Johnny Reb, our director extraordinaire, we say good night, and we'll see you guys on the radio.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Big Bill, thank you for that. Bill, very good show. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you.
One last thing I'll say is be sure to go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. Check the schedules for the Tuesday, Wednesday show, the Saturday show, and definitely do not forget to sign up for JD and his team's e-magazine. Y'all have a good night, and like Bill said, Happy New Year.